Welcome back for another season so far show. I've done about 20 of these today. My God, my head is spinning. But here we are, promise it's the last one of the day, with Brady Frost of And He Takes That Chance podcast. So we are talking Huddersfield Town. Brady, would you be surprised to know that I predicted Huddersfield would be relegated this season?
No, I wouldn't be surprised because we were terrible second half of last season. So I think that's not a bad shout, to be fair, Ben.
So, yeah, my rationale, I've just been going over this with a Blackburn fan. My rationale for them dropping down the table and then being completely wrong was, like you say, the first season under Corberon and recruitment decent enough. It kind of did what he could, didn't he? In terms, I don't know if Pippa and Toffolo were pretty good at the sort of first half of the season, but then lots of players came in the summer, and I don't know what you thought, but I was like, okay, they're building the numbers. Are they improving the squad? How did you feel when? Because it was Huddersfield and Luton and Blackpool really all went quite early with their recruitment in quite big numbers. What were your feelings in the summer as regards to your squad actually improving in quality or just in numbers?
I think we definitely needed the numbers. I agree. It wasn't the most exciting, some of the signings. I mean, like Matty Pearson, I think, who joined from Luton on a free. That was kind of like the first big signing the club were promoting. It's, again, a free transfer from Luton. No disrespect to Luton, because I think Luton are a good side.
Great club, yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's not, for the first signing to make a big song and dance about it wasn't the most exciting, but it was definitely needed. I think there was a lots of reasons why we were so terrible in the second half of last season, but one of them was definitely the injuries and then the squad depth. We had a lot of players on the bench who had not played any championship football, and in some cases not even any league football. They were, youngsters, and when we're on such a terrible run, to chuck them in, and expect them to do well, it was never going to work out. So we did need to bring in bodies, and I think that's why, you saw so many at the start. Initially I wasn't wild about some of the transfers. I don't think there's too many that catch the eye, but we conceded the most goals in the division last season, and Wickham conceded a lot, and we didn't get relegated. So it was needed, and I think it has made a difference. I was on the second tier, and we were talking about Tom Lees, who we signed from Sheffield Wednesday as a free agent. Didn't have a great season last season with Wednesday, and he's come in and he's looked really solid. So it's a lot. The recruitment wasn't great. It didn't look great on paper, but I think we are kind of seeing the logic behind it, and some of the players are coming good so far. But it's a long season, and we saw what happened with Huddersfield in the second half of last season. So I'm not getting too ahead of myself just yet.
But let's get ahead of ourselves, because it has been a tremendous start. I'm just looking through. There's this run here of 4 wins in 5 league games, and whoever you are, wherever you are in the league table, you're going upwards if you scored 12 points across 5 games. Look, we liked Karoma last season, and you're totally right. The team dropped off after he got injured, and the lad from Ajax as well. They seem to get injured at the same time, those two. But new goalkeeper into this season, and obviously the emergence of Boreham Wood's finest, Sorba Thomas, as well. Look, I hope you're not going to tell me this quick run of wins is a big outlier, because that's what the good form has been built on. But some very impressive results in there. I'm looking at a 4-0 against Reading and a 3-0 against Blackpool. What was that run built on, Brady?
I think it was just Corberan's kind of ideas clicking together. The first home game was obviously the Fulham game, where we lost 5-1, and we were terrible that day. And 18 months out, obviously, because of COVID, and we're all to come back. And then we'll forget about that one. But the Preston game was the real turning point, I think, for us. It was a god-awful game. We were not doing so well. Preston weren't doing so well at that point. And, we won the game without having a shot on target, and
love that.
Yeah, you know, well, you've got to get a win. You know, Neil Warnock has a few classics, doesn't matter how it goes in. And that seemed to be the real turning point. And you know, then obviously we went on to beat Sheffield United, showed real character in that, you know, we conceded in the 91st minute and still won the game, you know. So I think Preston was the real turning point, you know, in our season so far. And what's really important for Town, and we saw it a lot last season, was when they'd lose 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row, you know, and whereas so far this season, and I know we're only 11 games in, they've lost 1 or 2, but then obviously we had the win against Blackburn, and then it's not just winning a match, it's then getting a draw rather than losing it. So I've been really impressed so far at how we've kind of, you know, we're competing a lot more than we did last season. I think that's the key difference. You know, Fulham aside, when we're losing matches, it's only by a couple of goals, you know, at most, rather than 3 or 4. And I think that's a big difference, you know, particularly away from home. The Blackpool game you touched on, we were terrible first half, and Blackpool deserved to be in front. You know, they looked threatening, and then we just kind of, you know, held on, and then, you know, we got our opportunity, and then the game kind of opened up, and it was a bit similar with Luton, you know, at the weekend. You know, we were hanging on first half, and then we came into it and we could have nicked it. So it's encouraging, but I've supported Huddersfield Town for a long time, and we know what it's like in the last 4 or 5 years, and we've been in a relegation battle pretty much every season. So yeah, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself too much, man.
Understood. Now, I'm not going to let you softball this question, because obviously you had the player of the month for August. So I'm not going to let you say Sorba Thomas, but who have you really enjoyed as a sort of standout performer for Huddersfield this season?
Well, I mean, it's hard to not pick Sorba because that's just come from nowhere. Yeah, I've been impressed. Well, obviously I talked about Tom Lees. I think Levi Colwell from Chelsea has really impressed me. You know how many players Chelsea have on loan. You know, like
So
50
good.
or whatever. And he was, you know, we did a bit of research for the podcast and you know, for our website, and when I was kind of looking into him, he was one of these Chelsea youngsters that was really hyped, and you're like, right, okay, you know, it could go a Tomori kind of way, or it could go like a, you know, Clark Salter, you know, still good but not amazing. And you know, so many people were like, oh, he's the next John Terry, like he's better than John Terry, he's better than Tomori and Mark Gahey were before, you know,
Reece
they went
James as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow,
so
yeah.
And he's just he was chucked in against Derby first game of the season. I know we all know about Derby's troubles, but we also had a COVID outbreak, you know, 2 days before the match, and he was just thrown in, and he's 18 years old, and he's just so composed on the ball, you know, as a centre back, and he likes to get a challenge and stuck in, and he's not when you know, if you're watching like Huddersfield I appreciate not everyone's going to watch a full 90 minutes of Huddersfield unless you're a fan, because who'd want to put themselves through that. But you know, he's so composed for an 18-year-old, and he looks so comfortable on the ball, and he's really one to watch out. And he obviously got the winner against Sheffield United, and he looks like a hell of a player. You know, he will be a Premier League player without a doubt. He looks amazing. Whether he breaks into Chelsea, that's another thing. But he's one to watch, certainly, if I can't pick Sorba.
For me, for not letting you. But look, we've talked about him until we're blue in the face. I mean, he's been fantastic, obviously, hasn't it? And a great story as well. It's interesting the route that some of these Chelsea players end up taking. And I suppose for people like Coyle, I'm an Ipswich fan. We had Trevor Chalobah years ago, and he's in the first team squad now. And obviously, I mean, Reece James and Mason Mount maybe a level above even, you know, Colwell or whoever we're saying, but there's a chance that it's great, isn't it? If you can, even if they're going to become, you know, maybe a Premier League player, an England player, if you can even become a footnote in their career as the club that everyone talks about, John Terry going on loan to Forest, or you know, Frank Lampard to Bournemouth or what have you. Without being unkind to any of your players, is there anybody you've expected more from so far, or you expect more from as the season goes on?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I think, and this feels maybe a little bit harsh, but I've gone with Harry Toffolo. so he had COVID, you know, at the start of the season. You know, without getting into the science, you know, we know COVID affects people differently, but he sets such high standards for himself. You know, since we signed him from Lincoln for, you know, $500,000, he's looked a hell of a player. Obviously, you mentioned how good he looked at the start of last season. He hasn't quite hit the heights of last season as he has this season. But again, we were maybe perhaps relying on him a bit too much last season. But I'd like to see a little bit more from him, because we know when he overlaps, you know, with Karoma, he can be, you know, cause a lot of problems. He likes to deliver a good ball, and we've not. I think he'd maybe admit himself he's not quite up to speed yet, which is why I think the international break might be a good time for players like him. But yeah, Toffolo, mainly because he's been fantastic for us since he's joined. You know, not really put a foot wrong, and I think he just maybe needs, you know, a little bit more training and, you know, a bit more up to speed. But we know he's a fantastic player, and he was linked with clubs last year, and maybe me willing him to be better means he might, you know, get poached. So, you know, do good, but not too good, Harry.
I'm going to ask you about a standout performance, and as you can see, I'm very irritating in trying to predict what the guest says as the answer. But probably for Huddersfield, this is the hardest one to call. There's normally a standout win, but you've had some. There's 5 wins in there. You've had some excellent results and performances. What's been the most enjoyable one then for you, Brady?
Well, like you said, there's quite a few. I mean, I talked about the Sheffield United, you know, to score in the 94th minute, and after conceding in the 91st, like that, we've not had that in so long. Like, you can't beat a last minute winner. I don't care who you support. It's just so good. But I think the Reading match, you know, that was the game where we won 3 in a row, and that's the first time we'd won 3 games in a row for 4 years. And it was just, we were so confident, and we just I mean, I've got to admit, Reading didn't really turn up on the day, but we've seen so many times with Huddersfield, they're just not, you know, something doesn't go right or doesn't work for them, but they really had their tails up and were confident. And you know, you saw that. You know, I remember Sorba Thomas, like, I can't remember which goal it was for the 3rd or the 4th. He like flicks it over the left back's head and just leaves him. You know, and it's not that I'm one of those people, but like, you clip that and, like, you know, don't play it. But and we were just so confident, and I think that's the one that stands out for me, because obviously it's 4-0 and it's quite a comprehensive result, but it was just the confidence we played with that day, and it was just great to see. And, you know, when Corberan came in, that's the type of attacking football we were promised, and you really saw it. So I think that's the one that sticks out for me, if I had to pick. Obviously, the 4-0 win, bit of an obvious one, but there you go.
Brilliant stuff. If we're sat here at Christmas, Huddersfield are currently in 7th position. So I might have to force you into a painful answer here. Higher or lower basically means higher means in the playoffs for Huddersfield, which was certainly not on my radar, or, as we established at the top of the show, many people's radar. You would presume a drop-off towards Christmas on the basis that the start has been very good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would go lower. It's funny, I was looking where we were at last season, 11 games in, and we were 13th, but only 3 points behind where we are now.
Interesting.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so it's not too far off. I think, yeah, we'll definitely drop lower. I don't think we have the squad to do a playoff push or anything like that. You never know in the Championship, but so far this season, the only thing I would, not to be negative, but there's been a few games where we've played teams at the right moment. You know, Preston, they were terrible at that point, and, you know, we were terrible, got the win. Sheffield United, they weren't quite up to speed, and we won. And you know what the Championship's like. You know, there'll be teams you expect to win, and you know they'll turn up on the day and you know beat you quite comfortably, and there'll be games you're not expecting. I was looking at our kind of fixtures between now and Christmas. We've got, I think, the only 2 big teams really are Bournemouth and West Brom.
Never do that, Brady. Don't look at your fixtures. That's the
well,
way to adding up all these points. Yeah.
Oh no, I wasn't. But this is the thing, you know, like, we've got our next game's Hull at home, and you'd think that's a good game, but we know what it's like. So I think there will be a drop off. You know, we have put in a couple of disappointing performances as well. This Swansea away, where we lost 1-0. we were terrible that game. Probably should have lost by a couple, really. I think it's quite interesting when I talk to non-Huddersfield fans who are friends of mine, and they've got they support other Championship teams. They do say we're like one of the most unpredictable teams in the league.
Agreed.
So far this season. Yeah, and I think it's the same for us. We're still waiting for that drop off, and I think for the second half of the season again. But I think it's quite hard to predict because it's a bit of a cliche, but it depends what Huddersfield turn up. Because we've seen them beat teams 4-0. We've seen them been dire and lose. Get beaten 5-1, and I think that's probably the same for a lot of teams this season. So yeah, I think comfortable, like mid-table, as long as I don't think we'll be near the relegation zone in Christmas because we weren't last. I don't think it's going to be that severe drop off, but I can't see us being 7th around Christmas, even though I'd like it, but I just can't see it.
We were having fun peddling that Huddersfield are unpredictable narrative on the preview show, and because they're playing Luton, who have won 5-0 and lost 5-0 at home, and about 10 people in my stream said, "Oh, this one will be 0-0 then," because both sides are completely unpredictable, and turned out to be right. There you go. Right, I need an old school grade for you then, Brady, for the first 11 games for Huddersfield, 7th placed Huddersfield. I hasten to add, I assume we're going to get a nice positive grade from you for Corberon.
Yeah, I'm going to go with we do
old school GCSE letters.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go for a B. I think there's room for improvement, but there's, as I've kind of alluded to a lot in this chat, there's not been a lot of positives around Huddersfield in the past. So I'm going to go B. There's room for improvement. We've had some good wins. It's just about consistency, and making sure we don't go on those losing runs, and just kind of keep us going. But yeah, B, really happy, and more, I hope there's more to come, to be honest.
Brilliant stuff. And certainly as a neutral, you start to look at Huddersfield with Thomas and Koroma and Coyle and O'Brien. And as a neutral, you think, I wouldn't mind to watch, some of these players. So it's just keeping them all together and for as long as you can and building around them, isn't it? Brady, thank you. Brilliant insight. Where can people find you on Twitter, and where can they find your creative output in podcast form?
So I'm Brady0894, but it's the Takes That Chance podcast. I think it's at Takes That Chance. And we're out wherever, to use that classic marketing phrase, wherever you get your pods.
Oh yes.
So if you want to hear some grumpy town fans. I mean, we've been quite positive at the moment. But yeah, if you want to hear that, that's where you can find us.
Brilliant stuff. Keep up the great work, my friend, and we will chat soon.
Okay, cheers.